Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your co-host this week, filling in sort of last minute, but it's another veteran podcaster. It is Nick James from Buds, Bros, and Superheroes. Thanks for being on this week, Nick.
Oh, no, thank you for having me, man. Always happy to come and hang out.
For anyone, if it's your very first episode, the way we format the show is first we go through a block of news. We do have a Brocat question, which we're going to tackle right before the Brocat block, which is what we've been doing throughout the week, or the last time you've been on, which is about a month and a half. We leave that at the very end. It's the more personal side of the podcast where you get to know Nick and myself a little bit better. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 492, because there's a lot of tea on this one. Kicking things off with what is probably the largest bit of video game news that we'll see even throughout the rest of the year. I'm already calling it. We're only in January, but I think this is going to be, it is video game history. Microsoft is set to acquire Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. They plan to add many of Activision's games to the Xbox Game Pass once the deal closes, and they're saying it's going to close next year, maybe 2023, as I'm still in 2021 mode. So next year it'll close. With the acquisition of Activision, Microsoft will soon publish franchises like Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Candy Crush, and many more. So initial thoughts before we get into what it all comes with, all the baggage that comes with Activision Blizzard. What do you think about this acquisition from Microsoft?
It's a big one, $68.7 billion. I looked it up. It makes it the largest in the U.S. for the year and makes it the third largest acquisition on the planet for right now. You know, it's a very early year, but like you're talking about, it's saying that it won't close until like the end of the fiscal year of 2023. So it might not stay there that whole time, but that's a big merger. And already that's coming from something that I understand to be a merger of Activision and Blizzard.
Yes, that was already, I want to say a few years back that those had merged up. With everything that has happened throughout COVID, I think we've seen so many more buyouts than ever because certain businesses are going under or they're suffering, so a bigger one will go in and acquire them. And the video game market is not an exception to this. Although with Activision Blizzard, even though they have Call of Duty, which is a massive franchise, I haven't played in a few years, but it's still a top-selling title. It's its own franchise. There is this kind of dark cloud that comes over Activision Blizzard, and this is actually a good opportunity for Microsoft to come in and clean things up. This deal comes after months of sexual harassment claims against Activision Blizzard. It was the talk of the video game world last year. Settlements are being appealed, and reports indicate that nearly 40 Activision Blizzard employees have reportedly exited the company since last July. And the head of Activision Blizzard right now, I believe the last thing he did, Maceo and I were talking about this, was he took a pay cut or did not take any salary, but he still got the bonuses. Like there was still some money that he was making, but that was like his gesture to like, I'm doing good, here's my part, instead of stepping down. And Microsoft right now, it's expected that this individual will still head Activision Blizzard until this deal closes. Afterward, Microsoft will then replace this individual with either one of their own guys or promote up most likely a woman or someone that is more entrenched in the world of human relations to be the head of Activision Blizzard. Because when you have to do something, when you acquire something like this and you have all this bad PR, you have to kind of clean house. And I'm hoping that Discovery does the same with Warner Brothers. But just keeping this alone, you're Microsoft, Nick. Is that the right move to just clean house, keep the good guys, if you can somehow figure out who the good guys are and try to move forward?
Well, that's the fucked up thing about it. So you said like it's 40 employees have been let go, but that's after like 700 claims I read on one website. So like 700 claims were filed, and so far only 40 people have been let go. So Yeah, like you kind of just said, is there anybody in there kind of worth finding? I don't know. But yes, absolutely. If it's my call, you come in there, you got to clean house because 700, that's too much. There's no way nobody knew. It had to have been a well known place for that type of activity. So, yeah, a few heads have to roll for sure.
People have even pulled up old E3 footage where they interview people from Activision Blizzard, and they will make straight up, let's like as recent as a few years ago, they'll make sexist comments to people who are asking questions, gamers in the audience. And so they were like, okay, so this culture that they were running rampant with was already clearly a part. If they could just say it normally out in public, like who knows what was going on behind closed doors. And now with these people that have come forward, these women, of all of this terrible stuff that was happening at Activision Blizzard, it is pretty insane. And I mean, obviously you can't clean up 100%, but with this deal, I think it's the best thing that could have happened to Activision Blizzard. Just speaking company wide, leaving my emotional opinion about this out of it. If you're just trying to preserve that company, aside from like a company wide, let's change the name, rebrand, get rid of the head, and do all that, which will cost you a shit ton of money, Microsoft can do that work. Microsoft, who is currently not involved in that behavior as far as we know, so they can come in and sort of be the good guys of like, okay, and here's what we're doing. And they had that language too when they were talking about this merger of here's our goals, here's what we're doing to be more inclusive, and here's what we're doing to be more safe. Just saying the right stuff to let people know that they know what they need to do.
Yeah, it's Microsoft. You know, they've made very good decisions as we've seen in just kind of history of doing business. So I think, like you're saying, it's a really good idea. It's going to be, I'm excited to see it. So, like, do you watch Company Man on YouTube by any chance?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I find them to be very interesting. And I saw one on Activision and about like, excuse me. So, like, usually he goes through of why they're successful, or he'll kind of take an opposite approach and go through a business that's declined or even kind of been wiped out. And this was one of them about where they went. And they had an interesting history of just not always doing well. So hopefully this merger just kind of brings them into a position. Like you were saying with Call of Duty, like that's all I really know about them. Like that's all I think really makes them money anymore. I might be completely off because I also don't game too much, but like as I read that, like Warcraft, I know that's Blizzard though. So like that's all under one thing. But in terms of Activision excuse me, like all I can really think of is Call of Duty.
Back in the day, they had Tony Hawk. Like that was a huge deal. They tried to revive it recently, but you're right. They were struggling for years, and that's why Blizzard and Activision ended up merging. They were going to be bought up by someone at some point, because I remember Activision not doing too well. There's this sort of concern among the gamers, and some of this talk has been going on in our Discord tonight even, of Call of Duty, because that's probably the biggest shooter you've got out there until something else comes along and replaces it. But otherwise, Microsoft now owns it. So in their conference on this deal, they were saying that existing deals are expected to continue. So they were referencing Call of Duty still being on consoles like PlayStation, and that they hope to still have those games on consoles like PlayStation and maybe the Nintendo Switch. But there's this language of, if these deals go well, then we'll keep putting these games on these consoles. But if they don't, they could easily make it an exclusive. I don't know where you lie on this issue of where do you think they should keep it exclusive or put it on everything? But to me, Microsoft's just going to go with the deal I think that's going to make them the most money. And they're not concerned about, well, we need to keep it only on Xbox. They're more concerned with, well, if we can sell it to you as well, why not make even more money?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. Bill Gates, and just, I'd like to make money over keeping it exclusive. That kind of seemed, Apple's more end-to-end control, whereas Microsoft has always just kind of been, no, we like to kind of play with others. And I think that you're right. If that deal makes them more money, they'll do it. But if putting it on like an exclusive Xbox something, again, sorry for anybody out there, I don't know the language of it, but if it was exclusive for that, I could maybe see somebody next time going to purchase a system itself. They might go with Xbox because they like Call of Duty that much, or they like something else that much. You know what I mean? So it depends. Long term, they might make it exclusive. Short term, nah, just give it to everybody. Licensing and putting it out there and getting the brand on as many screens as possible is probably make the most money.
I think it was IGN that put out this great graphic that said, we're no longer in the console wars. Now it's the content wars. It's about how many IPs you own. And we're seeing that is very much true in the world of gaming. There's something coming back from the 90s, which I thought we would never hear about anything new about. King of the Hill. They're getting a revival by the series original creators. Both Greg Daniels and Mike Judge have decided to form a new animation company called Bandera Entertainment. They have a bunch of series in development right now, including King of the Hill. A quote here from Daniels, who said, quote, "We were very excited to go into different tones and different styles and try to expand the animation art form. We're in a golden age of content, right? That's animation too. That was one of the things we were talking about in founding the company. Let's push animation into all these different genres," end quote. Were you a King of the Hill guy?
Not when it was on originally. I had to come back to that. When it was on originally, I didn't understand the dry. You know what I mean? Like I thought that it was an old cartoon, like for older people, an adult cartoon almost. Only recently have I come back around after a lot of memes, to be honest. Like I just wanted to be culturally relevant. So that's really what pushed me more. And I like it. It's okay. It definitely has more moments than not, but not huge on it. No, I'm just happy that if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be these guys. And not only just bringing back the one thing that they liked about it, but I like the idea of, we're in the golden age of content, right? That's awesome. Like, yes, indeed we are. Exactly what you just said about video games is happening in every other form of media, of like, let's get as many IPs as we can onto one thing and here, sell it. So I know a lot of people love King of the Hill. So it's going to be kind of cool. I will watch it just to see. The one thing that they also mentioned was the new animation or like the style. That part I hope doesn't get too beefed up. I'm very interested to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some changes. Like, did you get that same impression from what they were saying here, that they're going to make it look somewhat pretty different from what they originally made?
Yeah, try to expand the animation art form. So that can mean a lot, especially with how it looked back then, because it was just kind of adding to the humor, adding to almost being a character or a setting, or the style lent itself to the story. So if they're not going to change the story and make it super slick animation, that might be weird. It might change an entire dynamic of it. But if they're going to change that dynamic for the show as well, it could end up working. It's going to be a wait and see, to be honest, because that is, like I just said, it's one of the things I like about the show is just sometimes listening to them and watching them and having it be that semi weird kind of blurry shakiness it's a part of it.
I also wasn't one that grew up on King of the Hill. It would sometimes be on Fox right before The Simpsons, and I would catch a little bit, but I was a Simpsons guy and Family Guy as well. So that was mainly my humor, which was pretty different from King of the Hill. So a lot of that humor did go over my head, and I think you're right. It probably was aimed at a little bit of an older audience, not necessarily an adult cartoon, but it is one that when I had Hulu some years back, I would catch some King of the Hill because my friends were really into it. And I'm like, you know what? I never gave it its fair shot. I would catch a little bit here and there. And it is funny. It's very good. And up until I lost Hulu, that's when I was like, all right, but I didn't like it enough to keep Hulu and resubscribe. But that all being said, I think that this revival will probably aim at not necessarily capturing that old audience, because they're not going to treat this from what it sounds like a season 8 or whatever it ended up being. And instead it will be, like they said, something new, something different. If anything, to be honest with you, to launch a company that's brand new, that's called Bandera Entertainment, they need that one hook of that IP, that recognition, something that people recognize. And then from there, if they have people's trust, or they're like, that was really good, then they can explore some of the other original cartoons, which are always a lot harder to gain any traction on. If you have a character that's recognizable, like Batman, Spider-Man, okay, people will watch it just based on that, but you really have to sell hard if it's an original cartoon, and especially if it's something that explores animation, something that looks entirely different from what people are used to.
I couldn't agree more. And the last thing, like, I definitely want to make sure that something that they have to keep, though, would be the intro. If not
Yes.
an animation, just that fucking song. They can't mess with that, because that was something, as we're talking about, maybe not being the hugest fans when it was on, I would still watch that intro just because it is so damn catchy, so good. If you have the chance, look up a Punk Rock Factory. They do a bunch of covers, but that one's particularly fun because it's just, they make it a little bit faster and it's so fucking good.
The world of Predator is finally coming back. It completely hit a pause when a lawsuit came up over the original creators. They had solicited the Marvel comic books, and those had to get canceled. I remember putting in the orders, and it's like, all right, never mind. These numbers mean nothing. And they now are going to resolicit them in the next couple of months. The lawsuit over the rights to the franchise between Disney and the original filmmakers, film writers Jim and John Thomas, has been settled according to a filing in the LA court last month. Not only does this mean that the new film of the franchise called Prey can come to Hulu as planned this year, but the very much delayed Predator comics will be resolicited in previews. And as I said before, Disney needs to pay up. You know, if there is a case here of, and that's what they were waiting for. They're like, okay, you guys bought out Fox. That triggered something in the contract that then made them either, okay, we need a payout because you now own this. I don't know what the details were, but it did trigger that. And it was pretty clear to me of Disney probably needs to pay whatever that contract asks for so that these two guys can move on from the franchise fully.
Kind of going back to even the first story of all the mergers. And this is where it's going to get muddy kind of going forward, of everybody wanting their cut of the pie, as especially the bigger and bigger houses get more IPs, you know, because they're looking at Disney going, fuck you, I know you could pay me right now and you're going to do it. I own the Predator, and thus the Prey. Like, really, that's their new film is really called Prey. I didn't catch that. Didn't know that until I read these notes, and I was like, ugh. Nobody got anything better than that, really? How long did that get kicked around before somebody went, fuck it, good?
Well, I think there might be something else as far as lawsuits that comes out of it, because this Prey film, there's a single poster, I believe, and there's like a synopsis on what this movie is going to be or what the series is going to be. So someone made a Predator fan film a couple years, like a decade or 2 decades ago, and the premise is almost exactly like Prey, to the point where people are like, Disney straight up lifted the idea from this. Like, even the costume design is almost the same. It's the whole idea is an indigenous woman in the past that is fighting off a predator that lands in the area. And that's what the fan film was. And she fights a predator. It's, you know, to be honest with you, it wasn't very good. I watched it. It's 5 minutes long, but you know, they're fan films. And she fights off the predator. The predator gives her, you know, respect or whatever and lets her live, gives her the weapon, just like you see it in the movies, and they fly off. Well, this poster shows an indigenous woman, similar costume. And I'm like, the whole internet was saying there's going to be another lawsuit out of this one, more than likely, because I feel like if you put out a fan film and another company lifts from it, there is something there legally that you can call for, isn't there? It's not necessarily well, I put it out there and it's based on characters you own, therefore you can do whatever you want. I feel like there would be some kind of payout on that end too.
I was going to agree. And then, yeah, you brought up that other thing. I mean, I stole your IP to make my fan film. You stole my fan film to make your real film. Who gets paid where? Yeah, that's weird to think about. Because, yeah, how can you say that you had creative control or an IP or what's a copyright or whatever that would then go into over characters that you didn't create? Ooh, that's interesting. I don't know, but it already sounds like they did a little bit of that at the end of AVP. Like, didn't they like get her respect and they gave her a weapon, almost like exactly like you're saying? Like, I remember that because that's I think that's the only one I've ever truly seen, which might make some people cringe. Yeah, I don't know what it is about that one. And again, strangely enough, Freddy vs. Jason, I think that's the only one of those ones I've ever seen as well. It was in that same year where I was just like, yes, everybody's fighting. This is great.
You're like, and I've never seen a Superman or a Batman film, but I did see Batman be Superman.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
And I'm like, Nick, what's going on?
Yeah, that was funny. That was very good.
And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep watching those.
But I mean, Prey, interesting. If it comes to Hulu, I might watch it. But that's interesting. So what happened then with the comics that Marvel has? What do you mean by resolicited there?
So basically, now that Marvel owns so much of, they own Fox, so that includes Family Guy, The Simpsons, it's Alien, Predator, so they can put all of those things into Marvel, publish them under Marvel Comics if they want. A lot of them that they do own, they'll let IDW or Dark Horse publish, and they'll make the money, kind of like they're doing right now with Star Wars. They're letting Dark Horse publish Star Wars books, even though they've got their own line in Marvel, and they'll just make money, kind of like Microsoft too is probably going to do. But they did publish these previous Alien books, no problem there. It's under the Marvel imprint, separate from the Marvel universe. And now they were going to do Predator books, same way. They were going to have Predator variants actually with Avengers crossovers where they're fighting different characters in the Marvel universe, even though they're not in the book themselves. But when this lawsuit triggered, they had to pause all production on that franchise, Predator, including the film, Prey, the comic books, any merchandise that they had planned. So then Diamond and Marvel, they said, okay, we're canceling these books until this lawsuit goes through. And once it was settled, then they'll resolicit them. So they'll put them in the catalog again, and comic shops can put in numbers all over again for Predator #1.
Okay, but still then coming out by Marvel.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I wasn't sure then if you meant like resolicit, they had to go around and like try to sell it to somebody else, but no, it's just for your solicitation for picking up for anybody who's buying books in bulk.
Right, yeah. So for the regular consumer, it's just a delayed book, like as far as they're concerned. Like, okay, it was a year delayed at this point.
Retrospect, that's not too bad.
We do have other comic book news as well, as after being away from DC Comics publishing for some time, Jeff Johns will be returning for a Flashpoint project titled Flashpoint Beyond. It'll begin with Flashpoint Beyond #0 from Jeff Johns and Eduardo Risso on the 7th of April, and a bi-weekly series beginning on the 20th of April by Jeff Johns, Jeremy Adams, Tim Sheridan, and Sermonico. The synopsis on this sequel to Flashpoint reads, quote, "After sacrificing everything to help the Flash put the universe back together and save Bruce Wayne's life, Thomas Wayne wakes up in a world he thought was no more. Forced to don the cowl once again, Batman prowls the street of Gotham City, searching for answers to how this world still exists, but what he starts to uncover will send them hurtling around the globe. The hunt for the Clockwork Killer starts here," end quote. So we'll talk a little bit about that fallout, but how do you feel about going back to the well of Flashpoint and exploring that world a little more?
I liked it. I liked Flashpoint almost like everybody else when it kind of came out. It's a phenomenon. It's one of those things that almost everybody points to now as like, I think it's one of the later ones of being a staple, or what's that book? They call it like seminal almost, like you kind of have to read that to get what's going on in terms of multiverse and where we stand. I like that it comes out on 4/20, obviously. The only thing that kind of threw me is when I read Flashpoint Beyond, I was like, oh my God, Flash's going to the future and he's going to meet Terry McGinnis. Like when I started reading Batman, and then I saw Thomas Wayne, I was just like, oh, okay.
Why would you call it that knowing? Yeah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said, why would you call it that knowing that DC fans are immediately going to think Batman Beyond?
I don't know. It was really upsetting. Again, you cannot put Beyond in anything DC and not expect my mind to go there. So yeah, once again, I read Thomas Wayne, and what are we going to do? Like forced to don the cowl again? Okay, like when did he take it off? Like when he left, we were supposed to be okay because he gave him the note.
Yeah, he never gave up Batman. You're right.
Yeah, what the fuck is he donning it again for then? Or I guess that's something we have to find out. I also don't like that it starts at 0 because do we do that? Like, shouldn't it start at 1?
It's that weird comic book thing of like, it's literally 1, but they're calling it 0 for reasons. I don't know. So they can literally have 2 number 1s, to be honest with you, because then comic shops have to order a shit ton of 0s and a shit ton of number 1s because readers are going to be buying both, thinking like they need that to start the story and to begin it. Now that I think about it, though, I guess he did die at the end of Flashpoint. I don't care if it's spoilers. This comic is years old now. So that I guess that's how they think of like, okay, he's back from the dead and he's Batman again. Maybe that's what they mean.
Because his universe blew up.
Yeah, it stopped existing as soon as the Flash went back and saved or stopped himself from saving his mom.
You're right, because then the series of events would have all changed. Oh, okay, same page now. Sorry. All right, so yeah, how are we going to get back there then? might be interesting. I mean, for the next thing that we're going to talk about for him and being shady and shit, like I do think he writes good comics.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been one that he's put out that I haven't not liked, or one that it stands out in my mind is like, oh, I like what he does, except for this fucking stinker or something like that. So I'm interested, but at the same time, then, and not to jump too far ahead, I hope you don't mind, but accountability over entertainment. So if he's writing it and we're still kind of discussing whether or not he's a shady piece of shit, maybe I won't run to do it. I don't know, man.
Yeah, this is where a good amount of discussion, because I'm going back and forth too, and I've talked to other people in the movement, in the Snyderverse movement, and they're also of two minds on this thing. So shortly after the book's announcement, which they dropped on the day that hashtag boycott WB we had set up as like, okay, this is the day we're going to make a trend. And it was like a month and a half planning. And every time this happens, in the past it happened with Restore the Snyderverse or Release the Snyder Cut, WB would release something to distract. Like there was the one fake news story of Jason Momoa voicing Frosty the Snowman in an all-new original movie that ended up being false. Yeah, and every time they do that, they'll drop something from their movies, a trailer, something to distract. They did it with the Batman at one point. So this news story dropped on that same day as hashtag boycott Warner Brothers. They also released that Batgirl image of her costume the same day. So they did a double whammy on that one, but it ended up kind of working out in a way because then Ray Fisher tweeted, and this is what you were talking about, quote, Jeff Johns is still a racist. Accountability is greater than entertainment, end quote. So this got a lot of chatter going of, okay, people can be excited about this book, but the person behind it is still a terrible person, according to Ray Fisher and some of the other cast members that worked on Justice League. And we know Jeff is very entrenched in the world of comics. He has many friends in the industry, which many speculate account for. It's like, why do all these comic creators constantly badmouth Snyder when it's unprompted? And we're kind of figuring out that there is an agenda here, obviously, when he has a lot of friends and he's trying to get them to tell their followers and readers, like to get them on that same page of, yeah, let's hate on this guy. Let's really not make this happen. And let's kind of, but it's really fanning the flames, in my opinion. So I do want to ask you, as someone who does enjoy the comics like me with Jeff Johns, does great work, I won't argue there. Where does the separation come on like the work itself and the creator, and where would you draw the line at that point?
Dude, honestly, like that is a never ending battle that goes on that I've thought about. I don't, it comes up all the time in different things that we watch. The other thing that just popped right to my mind is like James Gunn and shit like that. Like I just talked about Guardians of the Galaxy on Buds Bros, and I like that movie, but he does he kind of makes my skin crawl a little bit too. Mm-hmm. And going back to that, and then what? We have to look up everything that we've ever liked, and going back even historically, like we don't know, like what if we like old, like what if Will Shakespeare was a dick or some shit? You know what I mean? Like the whole thing kind of gets cloudy in my mind of how much are we supposed to believe? Because you brought up something interesting of like just Jeff Johns also, like I can see what you're saying of him going back to DC and being like, oh, you want to know what really happened? And just getting a bunch of people and like twisting. And, we both worked at places too. We know how that goes when you hear two people saying a story and there's only one in between that is the truth, and fanning the flames on his side, which is really just pissing us off because in my mind, I tend to agree with Ray Fisher. I can see all that happening, especially too now after this Joss Whedon thing. Again, sorry to jump ahead, but like, it just seems like this horribly ill-constructed story between everybody that's in the wrong, and they're just pushing themselves deeper into the dirt.
Yeah, and it's not even just Ray Fisher. There was also one of the actors on, not Smallville, it was Krypton that came out, and she also spoke out about Jeff Johns after Ray Fisher tweeted this. I don't know if you ever heard about that incident, because he was a writer or producer on Krypton, and she was talking about how her character should change hairstyles from scene to scene or based on what part of the day she's in, because she was saying that that's what some black women do, is they'll change their hairstyle or it's common among black women to do this. And Jeff Johns was like, no, it's not. My wife is black, I know. And he was trying to tell her like what black women do. And that's where she was like, all right, this guy does not get it. So there was a lot there of, there's other instances of possibly, you know, racist behavior happening, and these are just a couple of things that they've made public. We don't know what else has been going on, and I struggle with that too, man, because in wanting to see more of these movies, one of those would have been Flashpoint with Thomas Wayne, with Martha being the Joker, and to see that on the big screen with the same actors that we saw in BVS, to me would have been incredible. It would have been amazing art. But now that we're finding out all these things about Jeff and how Zack is probably changing the story, or whatever Justice League 2 and 3 would have been, that would have incorporated some of those story points from Jeff Johns' works to probably exclude them, that almost makes me think like, all right, well, maybe we don't want that movie because we don't know what else is going to come out in the future. So it's tough for me too, because yeah, I can only draw the line so much. I can only enjoy that content so much before I'm like, you know, this is wrong for me to support this. Like this book itself, I love Flashpoint. I would love to see from him what else he could do out of that world. But it's like, am I also then supporting him? So that's kind of the back and forth that I don't know if I don't know. I really don't know what I'm going to do.
Because I could see him too, like, you know, if we do, like, you've always said it, man, you support people with the dollar. You've always said that. So if he's going to walk into somebody's office and be like, look at these numbers, I guess people don't hate me as much as people think. Like, yeah, you're right. Automatically, you're like, fuck you. I don't know why. Like in my head, his voice goes, he starts every sentence. It's kind of with like this weird, giggly kind of rat thing, kind of, I don't know. I look at pictures of him and he rubs me the wrong way. So maybe that tells you something too.
Could be. Well, there's another bigger piece of shit. Maybe. I don't know. It's tough to decide here. I don't know why this news story, we're discussing it. And not because it's not news, but because why would you ever do this interview? In an interview with New York Magazine, Joss Whedon opened up and criticized the Justice League cast over their rude behavior during the reshoot. So this was I haven't spoken about this in years. I have been underground hiding. I've been fired from productions on HBO. He got fired from one of the TV shows, and he dropped out of the Batgirl project, or was asked to leave from the Batgirl project. We don't know. After everything that came up with Justice League, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Spike TV show, all of these actors, crew members, that stunt people that were mistreated by Joss, and his retort. And when I first saw this, I'm like, okay, this is his, all right, this is what I did wrong, and here's how I'm going to be better.
Yes.
And instead it's, no, the world is wrong. I'm right.
Isn't that fucking crazy? Oh my God, you fucking put it so eloquently. Yes, that's exactly what I thought when I saw this. I was like, all right, now we're going to get a kind of, oh, I was under a lot of pressure too, and maybe I shouldn't have. And no, he just doubled down on stupid. And I cannot believe some of these things that he said.
It almost seems like a parody. In the interview,
yes,
Joss claimed that he cut down Ray Fisher's Cyborg for two reasons. The storyline, quote, logically made no sense, end quote, which, you know, all right, we've seen the movie, it makes sense, but to him, it didn't. And he felt the acting was bad. So he called Ray Fisher a bad actor on top of and he was terrible. Like, what are you doing? Despite that, Whedon claims he spent hours discussing the changes with Fisher and that their conversations were friendly. He did not address the conversation they had over changing Ray's skin tone in the film to a lighter shade, or the script revisions to lessen Ray's impact. He did not talk about the booyah and how they had an argument over that line, and how Ray felt it was, even though it's the character's line, he felt it wasn't appropriate for the film. He saw it as a little bit of like a racist line too, of like one of those tropey lines, you know, of like, oh, I need one of those that you kind of see in those 90s movies where the black guy kind of says that same type of trope and line. He saw that among the same type of mentality of that line. He's like, I'm not going to say it. Excluded all of that and said Ray Fisher was simply a bad actor and the story sucked.
Well, we've seen the Snyder Cut, so we can obviously say to both of those, phooey. That's fucking bullshit. The story, how does it make... All right, I guess that they're both kind of subjective. But no, when Ray Fisher at the very end of that, the mother box taps into him and it's trying to be like, hey, come with us. And it looks like his mom and dad and the quote unquote perfect version of him, the fixed version of him. And he's like, I'm not broken and stuff like that. You can't tell me that's not good acting. I won't believe you. That's some fine shit that goes on coming from him. So what? He's acting as if we didn't all see this movie, as if it wasn't like a global phenomena going on across the world, as if it's like a fan fiction almost. Like, oh, I guess nobody really saw that. Oh man, yeah. And still, this isn't the most upsetting thing that he said, in my opinion.
No, it is not. It is not. And you're right. The film's come out. We can judge it for ourselves. He's the heart of the Snyder Cut. If he was bad in that role, that film wouldn't have worked because in my opinion, he's the center of that film. And I know some people say Superman, but to me, I connected a lot with Cyborg and it completely worked. He crushed it. And I think that's pretty much universal. Gail Simone was praising him. People that didn't like the film talk about how great Cyborg was. So there you go. And like you said, that was like the least of it. Others interviewed in Joss's circle claimed that Ray was doing Zack Snyder's bidding to make Joss look like a racist, to divert attention from his cut being a disaster. They also believed that this narrative, quote unquote, poisoned Charisma Carpenter against Joss Whedon. That's one of the Buffy cast members. In response to this, Charisma took to Twitter and said, quote, hashtag I stand with Ray Fisher, the malevolent force and bad actor in both senses who poisoned my feeble mind with trendy buzzwords and corrupt ideas about my experiences with a former tyrannical narcissistic boss who is unable to be accountable and just apologize, end quote. Wow. A lot to digest there.
Yeah, so she was on Buffy, you're saying?
Yeah.
I read recently, so Harriet the Spy was also on that show. I know she's got a real name. I think it's Michelle something.
Michelle Trachtenberg?
Thank you. Apparently there was a rule on set, never written, but fully known by all cast members, that she was not allowed in a room with him alone.
Correct. And
what kind of rule? Like, what are we talking about right now?
Obviously something happened. Like, what do they know?
Yeah, so like she's saying, and I kind of like the backhandedness of it, you poisoned my feeble mind and stuff like that. Like, how does he think that people are doing bidding for him? Or doing bidding for others, excuse me. Why would Ray Fisher go around saying or doing any of this if it wasn't true, as if it's not for his own pride and his own accountability, the word that he loves to say so much. Like, he's doing this because it's the right thing to do, not because he's doing it for Zack Snyder. I'm sure if it was any other person who did it and then chain of events happened the way it still did, if it was, who's another guy who almost did, George Miller, if it was George Miller for some reason, I'm sure he'd still be saying the same things if Joss had, you know what I'm saying?
It makes sense. The problem too is, let's say you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say, like, this is where it doesn't make sense to me. Why would Ray Fisher, Zach's like, okay, do this, wreck your career, Ray, for me and the cut. Like, Ray he's already said he streams on Twitch and he was like, I don't care if I never get another acting job. And I know that's probably not going to happen now because I'm coming forward with this and Joss has a lot of friends. And this was back like a couple years back when he was first coming out with this stuff over the Justice League reshoots. He's like, but this needs to be known. And that's where accountability over entertainment came out. He's like, I don't care if I never work again. This is about accountability. So for him to sabotage his own career over Zack telling him to do his bidding, that's where it doesn't add up. And that's where he himself is telling you, I'm doing this for me, for what happened. And obviously there's other cast members that now feel it's okay to also come forward with their experience.
And then more and more people will just do that. Like we said with the Michelle story, as I kind of stated at the beginning, the more he talks, the more his foot seems to go down his throat. It's amazing to me that you said it perfectly too. He kind of went in hiding for a while. He was almost waiting it out. It kind of seems like we've seen in the past of Hollywood, it has this trend of like loving to knock somebody down, but also loving the second act. They like bringing people back as well. Whereas I feel like if he just shut the fuck up for long enough, this again would have been swept under the rug. But no, he just came out and he's like, hey, remember me and how stupid I acted? Let's keep going.
And here's where he further blamed another. When it comes to Gal Gadot's comments, and this is where Joss said, quote, English is not her first language, and I tend to be annoyingly flowery in my speech, end quote. So he recounted a debate about a scene he had with the Israeli actress. He claimed that she took him completely the wrong way, and this was over a scene that she did not want to do. She was like, I want to cut the scene, and he said, that's over my dead body. That's when you can cut the scene. And supposedly, according to him, she mistook it as, I'm going to kill you, your dead body. And in response, and that's what his story, that's what it is. But in response to this, within a day, Gal Gadot, in an email response to New York Magazine, she countered with, quote, I understood perfectly, end quote. So she doesn't speak English well. That's why. Imagine that.
And yeah, that's almost what I was alluding to at the very beginning of this conversation about him specifically, about just being what a prick, you know, like, oh, it's not her first language. She probably didn't understand me. You know how immigrants are. Like, I can almost, again, kind of going back to fucking, what's it, Jeff Jones? Just like, I can almost hear every sentence this guy says, yeah, it's not her first language. What an absolute asshole. Now, do you think this is over the scene where the Flash lands on her and has his head in her tits?
We know that is one scene she did not want to do, and they had to get her stunt double to do it. So it might be that one. Allegedly, there's a couple of other scenes that she did not want to do. There's rumors, and Gal hasn't come out in detail about what happened, but she did say that she went to higher ups when it happened and took care of it. So that's kind of where she's left it. But the rumor is that Joss, at one point, locked her in her own trailer because she didn't want to do the scene and wouldn't let her out until she agreed to do some of these scenes. And what the outcome of that was, we don't know. That's just a rumor from someone that supposedly was on set. And there was also the threat of her career, which she did, I believe she did confirm that one. And Ray got something similar when he didn't want to do certain scenes, of him saying, I will make sure you never work in this industry again, and made those threats to Gal Gadot.
Yes, I definitely heard that too. And that is when I thought she was like, oh, okay. And then that's when she went to the Warner Brother execs and went, this is what's going on. And response back of like, don't do that. Don't do that at all. So what an absolute, I'm almost at a loss for words. You know, I'm getting myself too excited and wanting to bash this person just so hard, because I can't understand, because he wasn't even hounded for this. I believe he reached out and he was like, it's time to talk about it. And he almost, you know, when you listen to him talk, you're like, wow, he thinks people are going to like read this and go, oh, poor Joss, which
Right.
apparently isn't even his name. His name is Josh. So that's weird too.
Yeah, his legal name is Joseph. And he's gone as Josh as well, and Joss. So we got one more thing here where he emphasized that people had been using, quote, every weaponized word of the modern era to make it seem like I was an abusive monster. I think I'm one of the nicer showrunners that's ever been, end quote. Ever been, Nick.
Ever. In the history of television, he's one of the nicest that's ever been, with the outstanding rule to not be left alone in a room with anybody alone. You know, it's not the fact that she was just a much younger, smaller female, but I wouldn't even like a rule that I, at my job, can't be alone in a room with somebody. Anybody. You know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is weird, but then, yeah, compounded with the fact that those were the circumstances, of course, makes it creepier. But no, you cannot go around with a reputation like that and still kind of go, I think I'm one of the nicest ever. Because once again, it just makes you sound like you really don't live on this planet anymore, do you? Like, you really are the hero of your own story. It's amazing.
That's where the narcissism comment came. I was like, oh, well, there it is. Like, if this is how he's talking in a piece where he's trying to save face, you can only imagine what he acts like around people he's working with.
Yeah, exactly. If this is how he sounds when he knows people are listening, how arrogant can he come off when he thinks he's just talking down to someone? And that was the other thing too about the showrunners. Apparently I was watching some Fat Man Beyond and I heard a snippet of he would have meetings where he'd call out writers like in the room and be like, who wrote this? And you thought this would be funny? And like would shake them down in front of everybody.
Wow.
And Kevin's like, I've only done it once for this He-Man thing, but I was just so slobberingly grateful that anybody showed up to hang out and write. Like, it didn't mean that I took everything or that I had to be nice about or that I had to take everything, but I was nice about everything because they're here trying to add to me right now. They're making me look great. And the idea of just taking an artist and taking somebody who eventually, like, showing your ideas like that is kind of like standing up naked in front of people in a sense of just like, I'm very vulnerable right now. And, tough love and criticism can help somebody grow. However, doing what was described there is not that. That's just being a dick to be a dick. And yeah, I'm one of the nicest ones, I think. What an asshole.
There was a little bit more, and this, what we have on here pertains to the Justice League movies, to the stuff that we cover on both our shows, comic and geek stuff. There were some weird things there about him calling his mom sexy at one point, which was creepy. There's him admitting to allowing a 4-year-old to drown when he was 5. It's just such a bizarre fucking interview. And it's like he just completely opens himself up with zero filter, which in some cases that's okay to do when you're trying to purge yourself of some things. But he was almost thinking that this was all just okay to say and to put out, and people are going to be all fine with this. Talked about how when he was growing up as a teenager that he didn't get attention from girls, and how, he just wanted attention from all these beautiful women. And it's like, why would you say that? Because now these pieces are adding up of now you have power on the set of Buffy, and these actors have to answer to you, and you feel like you can then take advantage of some of these people. It just all adds up when he puts it out there that brutally open. I don't know if honesty is the right word that I want to use for this guy, but when you're that open, it's just shows you just how twisted and creepy this individual really is.
Yes, he set himself up for more pieces to fall into place than not, which was what he was hoping. He was hoping that I'll say something and they'll go, aw, but instead he said something and we went, you know what I mean? Like, no, you don't understand. I feel like a lot of people do that when they're quote unquote, again, I'm going to say apologizing, because in our conversation now, I do think he thinks somehow in here is an apology.
Right.
But in doing an apology, they have to give a reason in which you can't argue almost. So like, hey, I just want to say sorry that I was a complete asshole. But like one time this terrible fucking thing happened to me in which if you try to disregard, you'll come out looking like an asshole. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're right, but also I can't see how these two things are connected right now. So I'm just going to say, okay, and keep moving, So he was trying to say like, oh, nobody liked me and girls didn't like me. And now I was around girls. And it's like, yeah, you basically just said you didn't know how to be around girls and you had power. Mm-hmm. And now that makes sense to why you can't be allowed in rooms alone with them. Like, yes, perfectly stated there, sir. It was definitely more of a bad move on his point. Like I said, he should have just shut up and stayed somewhere.
Dug his own grave. On the same day that went out, Clay Enos put up on Vero the song by My Chemical Romance, Digging My Grave, or Digging Your Own Grave, Digging Deeper. It was something like that. And we're all like, oh my God. Without saying it, they were all like, fuck you, Joss. The next day, Zach put out a picture on Vero of a coffee cup with a heart on it. And as we said earlier, he said before that Cyborg is the heart of the film. So that was his way of supporting Ray Fisher without shitting on Joss. Because Zach's only once ever come after someone publicly like that. And it was against one of the critics. But he's not that kind of guy that will, from what we've seen, immediately, like Ray Fisher, say, no, this guy is still a piece of shit. He's not that person. So that was his way of showing support to Ray Fisher and the other victims. He did decline to be interviewed for the piece, which I think was smart of him, because he's like, what else was he really going to add to this?
And I find that to be so smart, almost like what you said of, I truly do believe he's never seen the Justice League. Mm-hmm. just for the simple fact of it's easy then to have plausible deniability of not having to say the mean things that I'm sure he would think of when he saw what ended up happening to his vision, and then still here with the declining. No. I don't think that he also wants to take the helm and let anybody distract Ray from doing what Ray is doing.
That's true.
He doesn't want to be another mouthpiece for Ray. I think that he saw this and saw Ray's tweet back and was just like, no. Like, he's handling it. He's good. I think he's smart. And like you said, for the people who are really paying attention, the heart of the movie, the heart on the cup, we know that he's there and the support's there.
Exactly right. Aside from Ray Fisher, Ben Affleck, and Gal Gadot's on-set testimonies, Buffy showrunner Cynthia Bergstrom, Spike star James Marsters, Sarah Michelle Gellar all previously came forward with horror stories of Joss's behavior, among others in the industry as well. So in case you somehow missed any of this, if I see a lot of people like, well, that's just Ray, that's just his story. For some reason, well, we know why, but they don't believe Ray, but they'll give credibility to Gal Gadot, to the non-black people is basically what I'm seeing and what others are seeing. So if for some reason you doubt Ray and his experiences, there's many more experiences behind Joss and pretty much ones that he fucking admits in the goddamn interview. If you just read between the lines, pretty amazing. The reason why this came out, I'm hearing, Nick, is that Warner Brothers may have given Joss a project, and whenever companies hire someone that got canceled, they'll have them do this big story to come out and say, okay, here's everything. And normally to do a PR statement of here's what I did wrong, here's how I'm doing right. And that's why Joss came forward after all these years, because they're saying that Warner Brothers, that's the rumor, may have given him something.
I don't think it's time yet. No, it'll really never be time. The more and more he digs, like we were going back to, is it ever? Who knows? Who was the guy who I was talking about earlier who kind of came back? Kevin Spacey's come back and is doing stuff again. The Hasselhoff kind of came back after a while. Louis C.K.'s touring again, doing shows. I wonder what the project could be. I wonder why them?
Well,
if this was their plan to have him come out and put out fires, he failed miserably. And then I hope this really kind of puts any nail in the coffin of like, now everybody's got to see what an asshole he is. Like, I don't know. Can I do a weird side note really quick?
Please.
Spike star James Marsters on Buffy does the audiobook versions of this story I love, the Dresden Files, and I just put those pieces together.
How he's connected to the Dresden Files, or
he reads them for the audiobook for Audible.
Gotcha.
So I've listened like without ever seeing one episode of Buffy or knowing who it was. I was like, James Marsters. I know that fucking name some reason. Silky smooth voice from For Now Forever. He'll always be Harry Dresden to me.
Perfect. Yeah, his story was something else. Each of these testimonies could be its own thing too, which story for another time, that's for sure. But as you said, hopefully this makes Warner Brothers go, whoops, never mind. You went about this all wrong. We're not going to move forward with that project. And as you said, I think every person up to a certain degree, there is like a moment of, okay, don't work for these many years. That's your punishment. You're going to lose. Louis C.K. lost out on millions of dollars for years. He joked about it like 2 sets ago where he was like, I lost my show. I lost all of these tours. And he's like, what else? He was making a crass joke because that's his humor anyway. And he did apologize. He did it way better than Josh did, and he did his thing. But he was like, what else are you going to take? My birthday, my name? Like, what else? You've taken everything. So it seems like when the public feels that, all right, you've paid more than enough, do your thing, and maybe I won't watch any more of it, the people that really don't like him. And then the general public will kind of go, okay, he's paid enough. He's suffered enough. I think there is that degree for when someone gets canceled. I think there is, like you said, Kevin Spacey at some point now apparently is working. I didn't know that. So there is like a degree of they've suffered enough. All right, they can come back.
Yeah, it seems to be like a fucked up thing in Hollywood. Just one of those ones that I don't understand. Hopefully we can break. But yes, it's exactly what you just said. He did something atrocious and he went away for 6 years. Let's let him back into the limelight now. They've done their penance, whatever. Fucking weird.
The last news story we have here is in an interview with GQ Magazine. Willem Dafoe, the great Willem Dafoe, recently shared interest in starring in the Joker sequel alongside Joaquin Phoenix. He said, quote, "There's something interesting about, like, if there was a Joker imposter. So it would be possible to have not only dueling Jokers, but someone that says to be the Joker that isn't the Joker. And that kind of opens up the possibility of an interesting story, particularly if you had Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and then you had someone who was either imitating or riffing off of what he did. I fantasized about that," end quote. What do you think about that idea?
It sounds super duper current. It kind of sounds like a three Joker scenario to me, where I thought, fuck yes, because there have been pictures of him on the internet forever in the Joker makeup that people Photoshop on. So right away, the look is good. Two, the chops are there. He's Willem fucking Dafoe. And I know that you don't dig on the Spider-Man, but I recently did see the new one where he goes into the Goblin mode and like he's still menacing as shit. And he's not big, like, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't ever want to run into him in a dark alley. He is a creepy, creepy dude. And the fact that in the Joker universe, everybody was wearing the Joker masks and everybody was exonerating him rather than like in normal Batman lore. You know, everybody's afraid of him. Nobody really wants to do that so much. Would make sense that a copycat would poke up many of them, if not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's as you said, in the comics, when someone does that, Joker will usually kill him. And that might happen in this, who knows? He did make it clear, though, that no talks have taken place. This is just something in his head, something he fantasizes about. And there's even no confirmed Joker sequel that we're getting. Talks have taken place with both the director and Joaquin. When a movie makes over $1 billion, like the director said, he's like, there's no way they're not going to not have a talk over, let's make more movies. So this may or may not happen, but I'm like, fucking Willem Dafoe. If you're going to have Joaquin face off against someone, have some kind of adversary if you need to. He didn't really need that in the first one. Well, I guess Robert De Niro at a point or something, or Thomas Wayne could have been that type of character adversary for him. But otherwise, you need someone strong. You need someone that can be up there with you. Kind of like recently, the Venom 2 movie, you got two amazing actors, Tom Hardy and Woody Harrelson. So in this case, Willem Dafoe and Joaquin Phoenix, you're gonna get an incredible performance from both of them on the big screen.
And Sparks would absolutely fly, man. It almost gives me chills. And I mean that. You know I'm a huge nerd and I know this stuff, quote unquote, gets me off super hard. However, I think even the non-nerdy, just people who appreciate the acting, because after Joker, I did a little peek into Phoenix for a little bit. I was just, the different things on the internet, reading different things and just how method he is and how much he likes it and being an actor and doing it and the trouble that he faced to get where he is and his brother being in the business and all these fun facts that I learned. Then going up against like somebody like Dafoe who's been doing it for so long, I feel like the set would be electric for real. You know what I mean? Like it would be intense to be there in a really awesome way, maybe in a little bit of a scary way. I don't know, but I do know that something cool would come out of it.
And that does overall round it out for the news stories for this week. We did get a Brocat question from Bobby on Twitter at Cuban Slim. He said, quote, "Will the modern era books ever change date range or slide back and a new era created? For example, Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age," end quote. So he must have been going through, I know he goes through a lot of his books, his CGC stuff, and he sees a lot of that with Silver Age, Bronze Age, current. I can give like my comic shop answer and prediction, but I guess it's more, I don't know if you took it the same way, but this question kind of like format changes as far as the comic book. And I think that's the sizing is really what made all those different eras have their own name, from what I understand.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
usually. Sorry. Go on, please.
Because the Golden Age ones are bigger, and their Silver Ages are slightly smaller, but they're still bigger than what you have now, which are modern-sized comic books. So it's all strictly by literally the size of the print, the magazine, the comic.
Fucking dropping knowledge, Daniel. No, I never knew that. I always assumed that it was just a retrospective thing, that once we looked back and realized, oh, we're definitely not doing this the same way we once were, then we can kind of dawn them. Once Jay Garrett kind of stepped back and we were introduced to Wally West in terms of the DC side, and the same thing with Hal Jordan coming in, taking over for Alan Scott and different things. Like, they were like, oh, okay, we kind of put those guys on the back burner. Now we're into the Silver Age and shit like that. It's again, I thought it was a retrospective kind of thing. And to answer his question, I figured eventually we think that we're in an era right now that we would come back to in a few age and be like, oh no, 2022, that's when we were like right at the very cusp, or right at the very end of, you know what I'm saying? But no, to know that there's different sizes of books never came across my mind.
That's my boring answer, and like that's my most honest answer of, honestly, Bobby, unless the books change size again, bigger or smaller, I don't think they'll make a new, and I mean standard, because we do get magazine-sized comics still, and we get some independent books that are, ash can editions, but until the industry standard all agree on a new size, bigger or smaller, that's when we'll get a new naming of whatever the era is. They'll name whatever current is currently, they'll give it another metal name or whatever, and then they'll call the current ones modern. So I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon, especially with print numbers. They're high, but they're not like they were in the 80s or the 90s. So if anything, I don't see why there would be a call for a size change. But my fun answer is, like, honestly, if you were to go by retrospective, like you were saying, Nick, like, all right, well, now this is the 60s era. You can even say like 80s and 90s, like the Chromium era or something like that. A holofoil era, that'd be a good name for them. That'd be like my fun answer of like, yeah, let's call the 80s and the 90s books something, because that shit was a whole era on its own.
Yeah, just a lot of heavy metal covers is what I think of. Just like balls to the wall fucking action of guys blowing shit up, just giant splash page covers. It's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of like 80s and 90s comics. Just almost like giant sticker tattoos like you see today are kind of coming back around.
Trading cards being thrown in comics, fucking Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, all those big names. Todd McFarlane.
But are you saying we're in the same era as them?
Yeah, currently. So the comics in the 80s and the 90s are the same size as they are now.
Now, then, kind of going with what you're saying, would you say that the addition of digital would add anything in terms of era?
I guess you could, if you were to. Right now, they don't really put as many of those digital codes in comics anymore. But then there are books that only come out digitally. I mean, you could define books that only come out digitally. And let's say in 10 years, there's no more print and there's strictly only digital comics, which I don't think is going to happen. But if it does, then you can say the digital era.
That would be,
its own thing.
Metal, we could do like platinum or chrome, or I don't know, what's a fancy metal that you think of, or a futuristic metal?
I like chrome.
Right?
You could shoot yourself in the foot and call it beyond, because then you can't go past that.
Yeah, exactly. But then everybody would just expect Terry McGinnis, and we'd all be in the same fucking thing again.
These fucking assholes were just talking about how you don't name anything beyond in the comics. But there you go, Bobby. I hope that answered your question. And if you ever have any questions, if you're listening to this on the other side, you could either submit it via Twitter, on our Discord, or on speakpipe.com/thereasonsimebroke. And that last one is a way in which you can be heard on the show. But let's head into the final segment of today's episode. It is the Brokept Block, what Nick and I have been doing this week or in the last 5 weeks. So Nick, since the last time you've been on, this is your first episode in 2022 for the Reasons I'm Broke podcast. So thank you for coming back in 2022. I really do appreciate it. You add a lot of great content to the show. But what have you been up to since throughout Christmas and into the new year?
Well, thank you for the kind words, first of all. Thank you always for having me back, man. I enjoy being here. In terms of the new year, dude, unfortunately, nothing fun or exciting, even since Christmas. Unfortunately, the Rona seems to be coming back around. The COVID's kind of getting serious again, and too many people just kind of keep needing time off, understandably, but that just means I'm at work more. So It's just been a shit ton of working. Nothing kind of fun like that. On my off time, though, I just started with my wife Ghosts. It's a show that was a BBC show, and now once again, bereft of any ideas, we're making it as Americans. However, shit's pretty fucking clever. We're about 6 episodes in, and more than once I've had to stop it to kind of like either reach. I don't know why, I'm that asshole in this. I was like, do you know what they just said? And I'll say the joke again as if my wife's not sitting in the room with me. But like, that's just how I get laughs out more sometimes, or I'll just stop it and just have to sit there and laugh at it. It's pretty awesome. And then too, we still have Ink Master. I think we might have even talked about that 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because we finally got to the end of the free ones available. So like the final season is only a few years old, and they still want like $1.99 per episode, and that's where I stop. I'm not paying that.
Yeah, that's a lot and I get inflation's a thing, but it's like even still, come on.
Yeah, and the way they make the math, if it's not $1.99, maybe it's 99 cents for 15 episodes. Or you could buy the whole season for like $13.99, and you're like, yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah, I'm going to save $1. Great, But I'm sure there's people out there who are like, oh, cool. If I do it this way, I save $1. So
exactly.
Good on them.
So I want to ask you real quick about Ghosts. Is that a fictional show? Is it completely? You were talking about laughing during it. Is it comedic?
Oh yeah. So the premise is, a couple moves into a house. I'm going to try to keep it bare bones. A couple moves into a house, and one of them can see the ghosts that haunt not even the house, but the land. So there's people from an extraordinary range of time there's ghosts from an extraordinary range of time who are now quote unquote haunting, because it's not that type of show. It is funny. This one person as they all try to now coexist. It's almost like Beetlejuice, but like imagine all the way back from Viking times up until like 1999.
Nice.
These people all have to try to understand each other's references and live together and cohabitate. And it's proven to be pretty freaking funny, man.
That is a great premise, because that's true. They always have, when people do these ghost stories, or they're like, and I saw this woman dressed in white, it's always like Victorian era. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, but there's been other people there since. So why is it always Victorian era?
I swear that's exactly what I was talking about it with my wife. The person who wrote that got that idea from exactly that conversation of why is it always Victorian? I saw a meme recently of like, you'd expect one ghost in the building to be like, it's Britney, bitch, like somebody's got to know a common reference, but no, it's always people from Victorian era and the white and the lacy, or men in top hats and shit.
Yep.
And then we go around and we speak English to them, like, yo, if anybody's here, say something. And they're like, I don't think they speak English. And it's like, yeah, of course not. I don't know. But no, it's a completely quote unquote original idea. Then finding out we stole it from the BBC. Like we do some of our greatest comedies, like The Office.
Exactly. Yeah. Where do you stand on ghosts? Have you had experiences?
I have had one, and like I tell it to people and they don't really. So I'm sorry, I'm going to go into it now. The door was opened. One time I was cooking ribs on a grill, right? And I realized, shit, I don't have barbecue sauce, but I'm going slow with these ribs. So I turn it all the way down. I come back almost 10 minutes later and they're charred to the bone, to the point where like they're ash, and they were frozen. They were meant to go on low and slow all day, and like it wasn't even burnt up. The amount of time that I was gone was not equal to the amount of damage done to it, and I to this day it's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. Of like, I don't get how that happened. But a lot of people are like, oh, you turned it on too high and you burnt them, which is the obvious, like, yeah, I thought about that, but that wasn't the circumstances, or I wouldn't put myself out there telling the story of how I could sound like an idiot. You know what I'm saying? Like something fucking weird happened, and I'm telling you.
Yeah. So not necessarily like ghost or anything, but something weird, something supernatural, something that you can't explain. You're right. You can't explain that logically. There's this much fire, and somehow they ended up like time skipped or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to imagine, because again, like it's not even the meat was burned, the bone wasn't even solid anymore. I went to go pick it up with tongs, and it disintegrated into ash.
Right.
I was only gone just up the road. It was 10 minutes. I feel like even if I left it on high for those 10 minutes, I would have come back to not like cremated remains almost. again, like you said, I don't know if it was supernatural. It's just something that to this day I sit and think about, like, what could have happened? Why did that happen that way?
It's like
What
one of
about you?
them.
Ooh, now I want to talk about ghosts.
I have not had any experiences with the supernatural at all. So I always like to hear other people's stories, because my mind goes immediately to, well, if I were to see a ghost, I would try to tackle it. Well, here's why: because if I'm seeing it, then light is reflecting off of something for my eye to be able to see it. So therefore, there must be something solid there for the light to reflect on, because that's how our fucking eyeballs work. So currently there's no psychic, mental, like, aside from your own hallucinations, that you could see something that's not there. So that's just where I immediately go to of, no, I haven't had an experience. And yeah, I probably would be spooked if I saw something like that, but I would also be like, all right, well, if I see you, I can hurt you, you know?
Good point. And that also, if you will, sir, just brings up one other memory that it didn't happen to me, but however, I did see it. I was dating a girl and she was going to leave and wanted to say goodbye to my parents, and walked into a room expecting to see them. So I'm like a few steps behind her, and she's like goes to say good, and like just stops, and like stops hard, and like just looks, and then looks at me and looks back. And like, I was like, the fuck just happened? She's like, there was somebody there, but they weren't. So again, I didn't see anything. I am the person who agrees with you. You must have saw a shadow. Our eyes can only do so much with, cones and rods, colors, shapes, sizes. There's things that I do that all the time. I think, oh shit, somebody's in my room. Oh no, it's the hoodie hanging on the back. Now that I have, it's like that shit happens all the time. So I don't bring that. But now that you said it, like, her reaction was real. So I do believe she saw something. I can never say what she saw, but when you brought that up, I haven't thought about that.
The other experiences I will sometimes have is I'll hear something that sounds like voices. And that's just how I'm assuming our brains are programmed to try to recognize human patterns or human faces, human speech in what we see around us or hear around us. So I have had moments where I'll think I hear, like, it's always when I'm showering, where I think I'll hear Leo yelling. And I'm like, and that's my parental mind of like, oh, I need to protect him or whatever. And I keep listening, or I open the shower door, and it's someone outside, someone's machine, like someone's lawnmower, something outside that sounds high pitched, that my brain translated to, now that I hear it more clearly, oh, it's clearly this, but my brain goes, that's your child right now crying. And I'm like, oh shit. So I have had those weird moments where I've heard it completely different initially. And then once my brain recognizes what it is, it comes out a lot clearer. So I've had those moments, but nothing outside of like just simple, oh, that's what that noise is.
I also think that that's some weird instinctual thing in the shower. And because I always hear weird shit in the shower too. And I personally think that it comes down to just you being so vulnerable. That's what would be the worst time to get jumped up on is when you're fucking like you're naked, you're wet, and all of a sudden somebody or something's going to open the door on you. Like, it is the worst time to be in danger or to have a loved one be in danger. Because again, I'm going to knock on wood. Like, never do I want Leo to be in trouble. But like, out of all the times that you'd want him to be, being naked is not when, if you have to go and do something, all of a sudden people are looking at you like, I know I'm naked, but I just think you're supposed to hear more things in the shower. I'd have to agree with you. I think we get heightened senses, and every little thing we're just like, all right, I got to make sure that's not something happening.
You're absolutely right. Although when you're wet and someone's coming after you, it's like, well, at least I'm slippery. So if you try to tackle me, like, you got something going for you.
Sorry. Oh shit, that was funny. Yeah, good fucking call. That's a way to take a disadvantage and turn that frown upside down. You're like, yeah, I looked at it like, man, I'm naked. And you looked at it like, I'm greased up and ready to go, bro. Get this going.
I hear you on the COVID stuff, though, with people being out of work. Jared was just talking he was sick. He was on the show last week, and he's had people out of work. Kelly and Leo are mostly over whatever they have. I haven't caught it. My mom caught COVID. I found out about this a few days ago. And thankfully, she doesn't have any, from what I understand. And I don't know if they're the kind of parents that were like, wouldn't tell us anyway if there was something wrong because they don't want to worry us. They're those parents, for good or bad. but she hasn't had breathing issues. So that's good. None of us in the family have asthma. And so for the most part, it sounds like she's going to be okay, but that's one of those things where it's like, okay, now I know someone personally that has it in the 2-3 years that we've been through this. And so that's where it's kind of like, all right, it's more real now than I think it was before, in spite of all the shit I've been going through with work. And I'm not denying that that it doesn't exist. I know it does. However, when you see a family member suffering from it, that's when you're like, it gets a lot more personal. But like I said, thankfully it seems like she's making a recovery. She's up and about. She doesn't have breathing problems. From what I can see, she has common cold symptoms out of it. And no one in my family, my dad, my brother's sister, they haven't caught it, even though they're all in the same house. So that's another positive.
And I think that's the other deceiving thing about it too, is my AGM got it from his wife, and he said she was just laid up, man, just super bad time, where he was like, I just felt sick. So I think that it's a lot of people who just have the latter, who think, oh, I can't have it because it's going to look like the former. You know what I mean? So they're like, yes, I know I'm sick, but I still have to get stuff done, or I still have to go into work, without thinking that it's all the way there. And then it just hits everybody a little bit differently. So it does seem to be making the rounds again. Personally, I was explaining this to my mom, like, I don't mind wearing the mask in some weird way. It fulfills this little boy Nick's desire to wear a mask in public, feel like Spider-Man and shit. You know what I mean? So I'm just kind of sticking to that. I felt a little fucked up with the other day, but it kind of passed just with some Dayquil. You know what I mean? So I took a test just to be safe, though, before going back into work. But dude, that sucks. Have you had to take a test?
Nope. Never. Not gotten tested. I've heard horror stories of people like, it goes up into your fucking brain. That's what it feels like.
It's real intense, dude.
And other people that are like, it's nothing.
Oh, dude, no. I had to get one done, quote unquote, professionally for a wedding that I went to last month. But this one that I just recently did was an at home, where it's like, put that shit in until you feel the cap touch the base of your nose. And you're looking at the length of the stick. You're thinking about the size of your nose, and you're going, if I put that up until where they're suggesting I put it, like, it's going to touch my brain. And it does. It feels almost like that. And then you got to rotate it. And that's bad, right? And then they're like, do the same shit on the other side.
Right.
And that's when it's just real bad, because I'm somebody who gets tattooed quite frequently, and I hate it, but I'd much rather get tattooed than do a COVID. I'd much rather sit through a 6-hour session than do that shit for 6 seconds. It sucks.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. No, it's just horrible. And then at least with a 6-hour session, you get a beautiful tattoo. With this, I just get a test that's like, no, go back to work.
Let's do this again tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll see you in 6 days.
Yeah, no, I haven't done it. And it doesn't sound fun. Yeah, it does not sound, in spite of what I've heard from all kinds of people. But it does correspond to, like, I've noticed people that are more gung-ho about, like, one of my old coworkers is like, no, we got to mask up. We got to protect. We got to be careful. And then he was like, no, the test is fine. It's not a big deal. Get a vaccine. Go. Like, that kind of corresponds too. But then the people that are a little bit more, I don't know what you want to call it, not as gun-ho about safety, like, oh man, that test sucked. Like, more realistic about the shit in a way, instead of downplaying it or overplaying it.
Yeah, I was not a fan at all, but needed it to go back to work. So, and then the cost of it too, where somebody's like, damn, this one's expensive. Because the one I got, fucking weird ass bullshit, Daniel. I goddamn tell you, it was Bluetooth to my phone. Shit was like $30, but I got an email sent like, no, you don't got COVID. I was like, I much rather would have paid 10 for, like, one of the pregnancy ones, like 1 strip yes, 2 strips no.
Yeah.
But it was the only one they had, and she was like, wow, this is expensive. I was like, yeah, but it's not worth sitting a day out of work, let alone 5.
Right. That's the other thing. It's like, you want to lose out on the pay. There's a lot of companies, Starbucks just did that, where if you're not vaccinated, you got to come in with a negative test result every week, and that comes out of your pocket.
Yep. So
it adds up, and it's one of those things, like you said, you make a decision of, do I want to lose out on a day's work, $50, $60, whatever you're working, or not get tested? So it's a fucking weird, shitty time right now, and I feel for you, especially since you have to get the test. It makes me grateful currently that I'm not in that current situation, but I could very easily be. I could get sick. I could be required to get a test at who knows where for what. So I guess we just got to count our blessings that, we haven't gotten the sick yet and that we're healthy and here to talk about it.
Yes. Again, dude, wow, you're very good at the silver lining thing. Absolutely. Super duper happy and thankful for our health. And I do kind of feel that we are just waiting at this point of just like, all right, God damn it. Eventually, if it keeps going around, because I don't know, like our break room is so small. I'm so surprised I didn't get on this last round. But once again, sorry, listeners, for the knock on wood. I'm hopefully, like you said, just keep staying away from it, keep staying thankful.
It was Jared last week who said that we're going to reach in about 3 or 4 months, kind of that herd immunity line of like, all right, enough people have caught it where the disease doesn't affect, it's not as deadly and it mutates and everything like that. But someone, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, where they're like, this feels like a game of dodgeball and there's less and less players on my team.
Yes. Yeah. All the jocks who stood up in front are now going down or have gotten it and come back. Like they're waiting for the next one where I'm just the kid against the back wall, just going, please don't notice me. Please don't notice that I'm sitting here right now. Why do we do that? Why do we make young kids do that?
What, dodgeball?
Just participate in anything. Like I was so goofy growing up, dude. You couldn't put any ball in my hand and make me look like I was coordinated enough to know what I was doing. Like it was going to be a shame factor no matter what. And yet they were like, you're up, go. And I was like, okay.
No, I hear like one of the things that I'm like, maybe change that was picking teams when it would, some teachers would be like, okay, till the last person gets picked. And there were some teachers that would be like, okay, there's 5 kids left. You go here and you go here and you go here. But that always sucked. Like and I've been the last person picked on sports stuff.
Agreed. Yeah, no, kind of going full circle here, going back to Ink Master of that sucks. The one guy, literally, they were picking teams and he was the last one. And even at the end, he could have gone either way because there was an odd number. Maybe, I don't know, but they were both there going like, I think you should choose the up. Like they were trying to convince him not to come to his team. And I was like, bro, that sucks. Like that's that guy. Like I bet he graduated high school going, I'll never have to deal with that again. And now here he is, a 30-year-old man, just like, fuck.
Right back in it. Nick, I want to thank you so much for being on this week again to a little Inside Baseball. Nick agreed to be on within a day's notice so that you all can enjoy this episode. So thank you, Nick, for being on. And please let them know about Buds Bros and Superheroes and where they can find you.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I do a podcast like you were talking about, Buds, Bros, and Superheroes. Those names are actually what we talk about. So if you're a traveler of the green, I made my 420 joke earlier. If you like kind of stuff like that, talking about product, maybe in a medical program or a rec state, like going through and talk about stuff like that. The bros just bullshit and kind of like what we were doing here in the end of the Brocat block, figuring out what everybody's been going on since last time we talked. And then Superheroes is kind of what we talked about at the beginning here. Not so much going through news. Usually I try to pick one topic, but it kind of flows and varies. So if you like stuff like that, you can find us on any podcast platform. I hope at least the big 3 and what I kind of I think is like Apple, Spotify, and Podbean is my main host. But I think Pocket Cast is another one. Mm-hmm. We should be just about everywhere. Thank you very much for that pitch. I appreciate the time.
And thank you to the other side for joining us on this week's episode. If this is your very first one or your 492nd, I do appreciate you being on and joining us for this trip, as there was a hell of a lot of news. So Brocat Core, if you have a couple of minutes, head on over to whatever podcatcher you're using. If they have a rating system, it doesn't help other people find the show or anything like that. But if someone goes by reviews and they see yours, it might make the difference to a subscription or someone subscribing to the show. So if you can leave us a short review, we would appreciate it, or 5 stars, whatever the rating is. That'll definitely help us out. But otherwise, I've been Daniel, joined by Nick, and Brocat Core. All will be well. So, Nick, you brought up vulnerability in the shower. Would you prefer to get jumped in the shower or while you're sitting on the toilet in a public stall?
Oh, man. Good call. So, shower, it's still my shower?
Yes, it's your shower. So you're at home. There's a positive there.
All right, sorry, I'm really thinking about this because I want to make sure I give a good answer. I'm going to have to go home field. I think home field advantage would definitely work because I know where I'm at. I know where to go to maybe get something that would help instead jumping. However, if I'm sitting on a toilet, and I don't mean to get too gross, dude, I can go biological warfare real quick. You put your hand up your ass with some poo on it, somebody's not going to want to attack you so much anymore. So there is that automatically almost get out of jail free card. Like you come close, this hand of shit's going in your face kind of thing. But I still think I'm going to go home field advantage of like, no, I'm going to go and grab something and this will be over much quicker. What about you? What a good question. I love that. I love that question, man.
Because I was thinking about that. I'm like, that's definitely happened to me where someone accidentally opens the bathroom door and I'm sitting there. It's like, oh, sorry. Like, I think it's happened to most people. But when you were talking about the shower one, I'm with you on the I'd rather be nude and standing up because I'm at least half prepared. Like if I need to fight back. But if I'm sitting on the shitter, like now my pants are around my ankles, so I can't take big steps either. Like I have to do that weird shuffle if I need to go after them. So I'm definitely at a disadvantage if I'm sitting. Plus, I'm already a germaphobe, so I'd kind of be like, I don't really want to stand up though. So I'll kick you from down here maybe. I'm with you. Shower naked. There's some primal thing to it as well. Like I feel like maybe it would bring up something deep in this ape brain of mine where it's like, all right, I'm nude, I'm hairy, I'm wet. let's fucking do this.
It's the closest to feeling like Tarzan I'll ever get. Yeah, that's a good point, man.
That's right.
Your monkey brain would just take over, make fists, and hope for the best.